Hello everyone, I'm delighted to be here to share this story. It's one that demonstrates where there's a will, there's a way. This story is about establishing a research internship programme for nurses, midwives and allied health professionals in the absence of any tradition, culture, infrastructure, strategy or funding. Oh, and all during a pandemic. Here we go. Traditionally, as you're probably aware, there have been limited opportunities for nurses, midwives and allied health professionals, collectively referred to as NMAPs, to become more research active, either by engaging with or conducting research as part of everyday clinical practice. This has been compounded by a lack of clinical academic career pathways. Evidence-based practice, including research, informs the mainstay of health care, and there is an increasing recognition of the need for NMAPs to become more actively involved in research. AHPs have already made significant progress in developing research capability at STH. Nurses and midwives already play an important role in research, although to date this has been predominantly in supporting delivery of research studies rather than as research leaders. And I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues, Ali Mortimer, ND, for research, and Gail Mills, lead nurse for R&D at STH, who have both done extensive work within the research delivery arena. Back in 2019, in a world we all now remember fondly, I was selected as a Senior Nurse Research Fellow in an NIHR-funded scheme called 70 at 70. 70 senior research active nurses, some clinical academics and some research delivery nurses, and some both, were selected in a competitive scheme born in the NHS 70th year. With the Chief Nurse's endorsement at STH, the funding enabled each of us to work within our own institution for 2 days per week for nearly 3 years to work towards the aims given in this slide. Everyone awarded the fellowship had a different slant, and my focus was to support developing clinical academic careers and consider the strategic mechanisms to do so. As part of my scoping of the local health economy, there was one fact that was plainly clear. At STH, clinical research is really strong. In Sheffield, we have the NIHR Sheffield Biomedical Research Centre, the NIHR Clinical Research Facility, the Cancer Clinical Trials Centre, and the Clinical Research and Innovation Office, all in partnership with the Medical, Dental and Health Faculty at the University of Sheffield. The existing infrastructure almost entirely and exclusively supports medical research. The doctors and dentists also have a regional integrated academic training programme based at the university, which receives around £3 million funding per year. Doctors and dentists have an established combined clinical and academic training programme and a strong tradition of clinical academic career framework at STH. In short, clinical research in STH is really strong and well established. However, the paradox is that sadly nurse and midwifery-led research at STH is unfortunately pretty weak and rarely acknowledged. In 2019, it's fair to say that it was a pretty barren landscape, save for a handful of disparate clinical researchers. Of course, we have some really good work to encourage research activity, for example, the Evidence-Based Practice Forum, sessions on writing for publication and so on, but there was actually no clinical academic career framework and no infrastructure to support the clinical academic training. We had no professor of nursing for research, no clinical academic leadership, no nursing research strategy, only a token mention in the Trust research strategy, no policies, no investment, and very few formal links with either universities. However, our new chief nurse had been appointed and was keen to support this agenda and reverse the status quo. Chris also supported my focus of my particular NIHR secondment, as I said, about clinical academics. The start of the secondment went well, and after an initial productive scoping exercise, we agreed the first year's work with our chief nurse and ND for research. And as we started cracking on and convening pandemic partnerships, the pandemic struck. And everything was cancelled. Pretty much everything related to Plan B. Everything stopped with this program of work, but the network gains and the relationships struck during those scoping exercise meant that adversity strengthened the will. And so after much deliberating and abandonment of Plan A and Plan B, Plan C was formed. During the scoping, a partnership was struck between myself and a kindred spirit, Prof. Sue Pownell, AHP and Director of Research in the Combined Community and Acute Care Group at STH. And this partnership was founded on shared values, passion, and a mutual frustration at the injustice of current inequitable provision of clinical academic training opportunities for NMAPs. Similarly, my scoping exercise had also led me to Lindsay Grieveson, the clinical academic training manager for the doctors at dentists in the integrated academic training program at the university. This partnership revealed their NIHR-funded clinical academic training strategy included a pledge to support clinical academic training for NMAPs within it, but without progress being made thus far on any plan. And finally, a meeting with the NIHR Sheffield Biomedical Research Centre manager, Jodie Keyworth, also revealed that the BRC renewal bids stipulated they needed to demonstrate investment of NMAP research opportunities, but had yet to deliver on this agenda. The net effect: 4 people, 3 institutions, 2 strategies needing action, shared values, 2 existing infrastructures, 1 for clinical research and 1 for clinical academic training, and thus a mutual partnership was born. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, the NMAP Integrated Academic Career Programme is called ICA. It has some similarities with the Doctors and Dentists programme, but it is administrated and funded differently. I don't have time to review this today, but the link is given here. A key component of the ICA programme, though, is the first step, the Research Internship programme. And so it was an easy decision. Our collaborative partnership would develop an NMAP research internship programme at STH using the skill, knowledge and infrastructure and existing infrastructures of for our mutual gain. We firstly secured matched funding from 3 sources to support a programme of research, including from the Chief Nurse at Sheffield Teaching Hospitals and in particular the Deputy Chief Nurse, for 3 nurses or midwives. The NIHR Sheffield BRC funded 1 place for any STH NMAP within the research to be aligned with their research strategy. And finally, the last place funded by the NIHR Doctors and Dentists Clinical Academic Training Programme, also to be aligned with their research strategy. The purpose of our research intern programme is to produce NMAPs who are prepared and able to apply for the next step of their clinical academic career pathway, such as the pre-doctoral or doctoral clinical academic fellowship, or the SHAR Clinical Research Academy Fellowship. We want to identify and nurture the research leaders of the future. Of course, an unexpected outcome of the completed NMAP research internships is to also demonstrate improvements in quality of patient care, patient research and/or staff wellbeing in their own clinical area. We also want to establish a successful and sustainable infrastructure and a network of experienced clinical academic NMAP research mentors across our institution to create a snowball effect. My project is co-led by myself and my colleague, Prof. Sue Pownell, and the programme is actioned via its component partners with an overarching steering group with responsibility for delivering and maintaining the integrity of the programme. The steering group integrates the key partners and hosted by the Sheffield NIHR BRC. In terms of accountability, the steering committee is accountable to the STH Research Executive and also to the BRC and core executive groups via the representatives of the steering committee. And finally, in terms of administration and data governance, the programme follows all relevant NIHR Sheffield data and information governance and management policies. So we have effectively piggybacked onto 2 existing infrastructures. Expressions of interest were emailed and cascaded in the Trust in February 2021 and promoted through Trust Communications Update. And we were delighted and surprised to have 40 applicants, 28 nurses, 12 AHPs and other non-medical HCPs. Although it was noted, unfortunately, that the quality of the applications, particularly from the nurses, were of generally poor quality. However, we were able to shortlist 10 good candidates and 9 were interviewed in April 2021. 5 excellent applicants were offered the internship and all accepted. Critical to this programme, and borrowing from the existing systems and process for the clinical academic doctors and dentist trainees, all applicants met with the clinical academic training manager, Dr. Lindsay Greenfield, for whom we'd already secured 20% of dedicated time for MMAP work. With her extensive experience, Lindsay assessed the interns' supervision needs. All interns were allocated 2 academic or clinical academic supervisors related to their clinical field or research expertise required for their proposed projects, and all interns were provided with an honorary contract with the University of Sheffield, allowing them access to all the academic resource provision they required, including access to PebblePad Online, a learning journey platform to monitor learning, and also Blackboard Collaborate. The internship commenced at the beginning of June 2021, and interns were released by their line managers 1 day a week to work on their project. And here are the first interns. Unfortunately, one has now left the trust mid-scheme due to personal reasons and has changed jobs out of region. However, what's really positive is that the interns are encouraged to provide and support and shared experiences to each so that we have a cohort effect. I'm not going to detail all the details about each of the interns, but it's there and the slides will be available for you all. The interns have received regular progress meetings with their academic supervisors and met regularly with the clinical academic training manager to ensure relationships are productive and timelines kept to. In addition, the interns have one-to-one with the intern profs, myself and Sue Pownell, on a quarterly basis to monitor progress, troubleshoot and receive informal feedback on the programme progress. They've also received mentorship and, where possible, coaching. Learning modules have been developed and several teaching sessions and lectures were delivered throughout the year based on the interns' learning requirements. Several academics, clinical academics and research administrators have contributed to this teaching programme, and we have drawn from a large cohort of committed colleagues who are giving up their valuable time to contribute. As for the next steps, an intern graduation is planned for next month. The interns will present their work, and this will include an impact evaluation using the locally developed Victor tool to demonstrate impact in clinical practice, and a summary of their learning experience and also a career development plan. It's an expectation of this first cohort that they'll form an alumni group and provide peer support and guidance to the next cohort of research interns. Planning for the next cohort of interns has already begun, including securing funding. We've also succeeded in securing further temporary funding for the clinical academic training manager, who is absolutely essential and pivotal to the future success and security of this programme. And finally, the co-chairs are working to influence key stakeholders in the trust, such as through the development of the new STH research strategy to ensure clinical academic training opportunities and funding streams for MMAPs become the new normal. So what are the top tips we learned from this experience? Firstly, where there's a will, there's a way. This was a story of establishing a research internship programme for nurses, midwives and allied health professionals in the absence of tradition, culture, infrastructure or funding, and oh yes, during a pandemic. My top tips for success are: where there is no tradition, join forces with like-minded people, draw strength in shared values and numbers and normalises values and behaviours. A team is best. Where there is no culture, borrow. Where there is no infrastructure, borrow. Where there is no strategy, have faith there will be and borrow in the interim. Where there is no funding, beg. And where there is a void, influence, motivate, galvanise, lead. And when there is a pandemic, have a plan B and C and D. And don't ever, ever give up. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge the interns who've really risen to the challenge and been so excited and engaged with the opportunity they've been provided with. It wouldn't, of course, happen without the funders, the supervisors, the mentors, coaches and teachers. We need to thank the wider steering group and particularly the working group, Sue Pownell, Lindsay Grieveson, Jodie Keyworth and Jenny Smith. It's been a joyful partnership and a delight working together to get this going. We've got a long journey ahead, but it's so far so good and a starter for 10. And that's the story. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.